Right. This is Gina Smith-Kundinger, and you are watching the Break It Down show.
This is a blast. I cannot wait to do this. I've thought about this day, Gina, no shit, like almost since the start. You know, we have not been in the same physical space since the 90s. And
oh my God. Yeah.
I know. And we live together like every day, constantly,
yep.
Like a team in the field.
Uh-huh.
We went from, so just for the audience, this is Miss Smith, who was boss in Bosnia. When I say my boss, my immediate boss, like she ran our team. And maybe, I don't know what, Gina, like 3 months before we went on our deployment to Bosnia, we really didn't even know each other. We weren't even in the same company.
No.
We had different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And when they put teams together, and I don't know how much of a role you had in this, they threw us together like, these fuckers here. Like we had a guy on our team who wasn't even going to be in the Army by the time we deployed.
Right.
We didn't have a radio. We deployed to war with no radio.
You're right. And we spent all that time. Do you remember? So first they threw us together, and then they kept changing it around. And not this team and that team. And I don't even think it was the same team when we got to Tuzla. Remember when we were Tuzla? And then so it was us. We traded somebody else out. I don't remember who it was. But, I remember sitting on the Sava River. Remember, it was freezing cold out there. And I'm laying in our little vehicle. And every time I'd have to go to the bathroom, I'd drop my drawers and somebody would walk by. I'm like, this sucks. And we weren't even there yet.
Yeah, we're in Hungary. There's no war there.
Yes.
Oh, my God. It's hilarious. Yeah, so this is a spy versus spy episode. We're going to talk about some intelligence stuff, but even in intelligence units, and I think maybe in particular in intelligence units, we're not really good at Army stuff. Like we do our best, but what we're supposed to do is go talk to people, but they still want us to do Army stuff. So it's kind of hilarious. A lot of us aren't hard asses. We're not terribly proficient in Army skills, and so they always want us to train on Army skills. But the reality is being an interrogator like you were, a technician at that, being a counterintelligence, that's way harder and way harder to train on.
Right.
But we never trained on that stuff.
Never. And they expect you to do that on your own. So be good at your job on your own, but still be a soldier. I'm not sure how that really works, but we try to do it.
When you think about our pre-deployment training, and again, I'm going to say these words out loud for the audience. We were going to war. When we were going to Bosnia, we were told there were 50 million mines, and that number would grow every briefing to 80 million, 100 million, 100 billion, million, zillion. And people were going to die. I remember the day when one of this, like, some of you will not come back. Some of you will die. And we're all looking around the room like, what? What are we doing? Did you in any way feel prepared to go when we went?
No, do you remember working Saturdays and Sundays?
Yes.
And them telling, I think it was Colonel Vivon
that
told us that we were gonna just train to be miserable because we were gonna be miserable. And I'm thinking, is that to time or is that to standard? Because I'm already there,
I remember you saying that. Yeah, it's already miserable. And then I want to point out a thing that Colonel Vivon said, because I've got a memory for these things. He said, if I find out that any of you bring summer boots on this deployment, I will give you an Article 15.
Yeah.
The third day we were in Tuzla, guess what he had on? And I looked at him, I looked at his boots, I looked at him, I looked at his boots, and I made it clear without saying a word that I remembered what he said, and he lied to me. And his credibility with me, it wasn't great anyhow, but at that point, I'm like, you're a joke,
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and you didn't have the privilege of going on all the officer runs that we went on, and he would try to smoke the lieutenants out there running and pushing them in the bushes. Anybody who was trying to pass him. And I was just over it. I just wanted to get there, get shot at, get wounded, and come back. So
you must remember this. Then he pushed as a guy named Lieutenant McDermott. Now he's known as Colonel McDermott. He was in fantastic physical fitness, and Colonel Vivon tried that crap with him, and he came up and he blasted him back, and he's like, "That's it. Article 15," but it didn't fly because he had assaulted Lieutenant McDermott first.
Right.
These are the
Oh
kind
my
of people that were
gosh.
leading us into war.
Well, but you notice that, he was always Colonel Vivon was always on us about little things, little peddly things. But when we got to Tuzla, he was so nice to us because we all had ammo, and
Yeah.
he didn't want to be the first one to get shot by
That's
friendly
right.
fire.
That's right.
So,
Yeah. I'll tell you another funny Colonel Vivon story. Specialist Fuller, my friend Brian Fuller, who's been on the show. He's 6'4", 260. He's a massive human. And he was running through this little gauntlet you had to run through to go out to PT formation. And, it's like the colonel, the sergeant major, maybe a couple of commanders, first sergeants, that kind of thing. And that's sort of where they yucked it up and everything. And, the colonel always had those stupid jokes he would tell.
right.
And so he comes by and it's like, hey, Specialist Fuller. And Colonel Vivon was not, he was a small, short guy, but he was, well muscled and everything.
Right.
And he's like, Specialist Fuller, you ever hear them that saying? No, sir. What's that? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. What do you think about that? Who said that, do you think? And he's like, a little guy. And then just ran away. Because Fuller could eat him for lunch. Just lay on him,
Oh my gosh. I was just that deployment though, it ended up being more fun once we got there. But I remember first, sitting there all night waiting to, cross into Tuzla. I think that was a 3 or 4 day event. Then once we got to the other side, and it was like a holding area in Hungary. And remember how nobody wanted to pull fire guards so we could leave the heater on in the tent.
Yeah.
So we were all frozen and nobody wanted to get up. And I remember washing my shirts, because we couldn't do laundry. I remember washing my t-shirts in the shower and then hanging them up over my cot. And it was like a headboard when I woke up because it was stiff. And I mean, it's like, okay, so now how am I going to get this thing dry and get it on?
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, let's just get where we're going so it can be better.
It took so long. It was so long. Yeah. When you think about your pre-deployment training and like the things that we did, I know for me, we did the stupid winter driving video over and over and over again. Like they would lose the roster, like let's just do it again. But we literally, I don't remember doing anything else of value at all prior to deployment. But maybe I forgot things. Do you recall anything valuable?
No. I remember we spent a lot of time at work, a lot of time passing rosters around, passing things around, but actually, I mean, stuff that we could use that was valuable, not so much. I think we spent a lot of time in the motor pool, which is good because we spend a lot of time in our vehicles. But I think I'm hoping that training for soldiers now going on deployment is much better than it was for us back then because it was laughable. It was like let's just get there and get this over with. And then I remember one of the things I remember that we used to have to do was our trailer. Remember when we had to hook the trailers on the back of our Humvees and pack them and unpack them and pack them right and pack. And I thought, dear God, what? Let's just pack it and go. Why do we have to pack it and unpack it? I don't understand.
The training I did the most in Germany was alert, assemble, upload. And, I just got you just get so good at packing the trailer. Keep in mind, I'm not getting any better at being a spy. I know where the stove goes. I know where the table goes. And so, we did that. And I remember one time we were doing some kind of pre-combat check and Captain Norwood came up and he's like, do you have a 6-month supply of toilet paper? And we laughed at him. Like,
we're not living in this thing for 6 months, are we? Aren't
we going to go somewhere? Aren't there going to be supplies somewhere? 6 months supply? and for the audience to understand too, and I know we're kind of yucking it up here, but there was no room for 6 months supply of toilet paper. Like we were bringing things that we were going to maybe need. Like we really might need a stove. We might need a tent. And like we had to bring these things to live and have an office, and so we were full of things. And the other thing I remember that came out of it was the teams that had good like woodworking skills all had really good shelters inside the back of the Humvees. And we did all right. We had some wood and everything, but the whole thing was a joke, really. Pre-deployment.
It was.
So then we deploy. And we spend, like you said, I don't know, what was it, a week? And we get to Hungary and all the way down to Bosnia. And do you recall this? At one point, one of the vehicles broke and could only go 15 miles an hour because we already had a vehicle attached to the wrecker.
I don't remember that.
Are you in any way surprised to hear this?
No, I'm not.
Yeah. We were driving 15
Oh.
miles an hour. And just for the audience's sake, like I was Miss Smith's driver. So my job was to just drive us down the road and maintain our interval. And at one point, because you're just sitting still and we're in a tent, but it's attached to a car. It's not in any way warm. And so you're driving and you're freezing. And at one point I just fell asleep because we'd been up so long. And I think you probably had fallen asleep too. We both looked up. Everybody was gone. But all the cars behind us were just chilling because they didn't know. They thought we just stopped. And so we drove and we caught them up pretty quick. But I mean, that's how crazy that whole deployment was, at least getting down there.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at some of these comments here.
Yeah.
Couch. Anyhow, the hilarity of getting down there. Then we got to Hungary, and then President Clinton came down, and everybody wanted to go see him. And I'm like, fuck that guy. He sent us here. Like, I'm taking a nap.
Oh my God.
But it turns out January in Hungary is really cold.
I saw a cartoon somewhere that said it's these two soldiers and they're laying on their bellies in Bosnia, and it said, somehow I thought hell was going to be much warmer than this.
Seriously. It was so cold. Okay, so we finally get, is there anything you want to talk about from Hungary down to Bosnia at all?
No, that was kind of a blur. I think most of my memories are actually in Bosnia. Once we left Tuzla and they sent us out to the 30th Medical Brigade, to go there as like what was that team called? For us to do a vulnerability assessment.
Right.
Do you remember that? And they sent us out there for that. And as soon as we got there, we decided we are not going back to Tuzla.
Yeah.
We are staying there no matter what we have to do, who we've got to pay, who we have to bribe. We are not going back. And that's basically what happened. They kind of fell in love with us and we stayed there.
Yeah. So just for the audience, when we all get to Bosnia, everybody wants to tear everybody else's heads off. It's chaos. And then we live in a coke plant. So like literally there's coke dust on everything. And so we all live in these tents. There's like 18 people in a tent and it's just shitty living. Mm-hmm. And so, Miss Smith got us a job and we left. We were maybe 10 miles away from there, but it was a world away in terms of we were left alone. No one could fuck with us. It was good. Yeah. And other teams didn't fare so well, as you know.
Oh yeah. I think they all wanted to come to where we were. And at some point there was talk of pulling us back. And then of course, we had Tim on our side. So we got him involved. We're like, oh, we are not going back. We're not going back.
Not going back. We need these guys. So we didn't spend too much time at Tuzla, Maine, but yeah, we got out there and we did a really good job of the vulnerability assessment. And we did have our NCO for the team was a guy named Bart Dachko. And
oh good gosh.
Bart was, in some ways, he was one of the better leaders that I ever had in terms of he let us do our job and we did the work and that was great. But I told him at one point, the woman I ended up marrying, she was a service member. Like if you see Sergeant Dachko talking to me and he's yelling at me, he's not yelling at me. That's just how he talks. He just yells at people. And so she's like, was he yelling at you today? I'm like, nope. We were just having I saw when you walked by, we were just talking about lunch, He was, I think, a misunderstood guy. He and we butted heads because he didn't understand, I guess, how to approach leadership and talk to them like they were. His way of leading was to yell at everybody. Yeah. And you know me, I don't yell at anybody. And if I'm yelling at you, dude, you're in trouble. So of course I don't want an NCO yelling at me. And that was how it worked all the time. And we butted heads. And then part of it was that I knew my human side of things, but I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing on the 97 Bravo side. You know what I mean? On their side of things. And so going to him
and asking him for help was like a pride swallowing gut
Yeah.
busting event for me. And then he was looking at me like, well, you should know how to do this. I'm like, but I didn't learn how to do that. So
Right.
going back to the training, they divided the teams up and they just used a warrant officer as the team leaders, but they did not give the warrants who were not bravos any type of training on what we should be doing.
Yeah.
So I have an idea of what a bravo did, and I know I was there because I was, the warrant officer on the team. But it was frustrating for me to not really know for a long time what my role was, and by the time I figured it out, it was time to leave.
Right.
So
Well, and also in your defense too, what we do in a given situation can be totally different. That job, that counterintelligence job, is so
mhm.
multifaceted
Right,
that
right,
even if you had a command of like, I know what these guys do at the field office, that totally different ball game than going out to a deployed area. I mean, it's even more complex. And I think, well, and you were a new warrant officer too, like you had
right.
just come back, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Yeah, so Bart and John Murray is on the thread here with us. And he said Bart was
Uh-huh.
crazy. So I don't know if you can
Yes,
see
he
that,
was.
but and it's funny. I saw Bart. I can get into this a little later on, but I saw Bart. I was at the CIFSO course, which is a source operations course for the audience
Uh-huh.
at Huachuca, the home of all the intelligence assets for the Army. And he came through, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to teach you how to do source operations." And that was hilarious. And so did Chief Wood. Chief Wood from
Okay.
Hanau came through,
Uh-huh.
or Hanau, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I would see these. No, not Wood. That wasn't his name. It was Bart. No, wait, his name. I'll think of it. Anyhow,
Okay.
a couple people from the 165th came through the course, and that was kind of funny. And then my boss at Huachuca had no idea what I did, or it didn't care. He was, just a goofy warrant. He had deployed to Somalia, and he was, he's just a warrant officer, drank coffee,
Yeah.
crack jokes, and had enough ego. He did not care about anybody else. He's a good boss, but he had no comprehension that I had done the job. And so we actually saw Chief Wood out in Fort Gordon. We went there for a mobile training thing that they had us come out. So we drive across the nation to go do training. And Jason Wood is like, hey, does your boss know that you ran like basically the only source operations going on in Bosnia? And the first one, for sure, under the new regulation. And I'm like, no, I try to tell him that. He thinks I'm the computer guy. Which is so Army. That's so Army.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
Okay, let's go back to so we get to the medical unit, and it's a brigade, and they really are a hospital with all its support, and they don't have any kind of intel asset, and so they were desperate to keep us. That worked out in our favor.
Right. Right.
Do you remember when we almost had to move to that airfield, and they said, "Oh no, you can't live here in your tent and on asphalt. You have to be on wood," and they had no provisions for us.
Yeah.
And so that's when we went back and stayed.
Yeah, and it was like out in the middle of nowhere, and we're like, so let me get this straight. You want me to live out in the middle of nowhere on wood, but I can't live back in. I don't know. I don't know if it was the frustrated look on my face or the look of like I quit today. I'm just taking my toys and going home or what. But I think at some point somebody with some common sense stepped in and said that doesn't make sense. Why would you send them there?
Yeah.
But I do remember they sent us to do a vulnerability assessment. I can't think of the designation of that. They had a supply unit that had moved into Angela. Remember at the bottom of the quarry? Yeah, and they were originally had like just taken this road in the quarry and put a tent, and put a fence around it right in the middle of this road and said, this is where we're going to build our camp. And we're like, well, how are the people going to get home? Because the village is there and the only road is on the other side of this fence.
Yeah.
I remember fighting them over that, going, you can't put a camp here.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any, it's just the silliest things. And I had never done a vulnerability assessment, and even I could see that just didn't make any sense.
It turns out when I did one, I'd never done one either. But I knew how to work a camera. I knew how to work the laptop good enough to illustrate things, and we pointed out things that we had no training in that business, and I'm like, there appears to be some open area here for high avenue of approach. Maybe, I don't know. And I'll be damned, like they took some of the recommendations seriously. We also did a couple other vulnerability assessments.
I remember it wasn't Angela.
Bedrock?
No, I remember the one that was at the bottom of the lake. Yeah, well, Bedrock wasn't bad, but the one that was at the bottom of the quarry, and they had a train running through their site. Remember that?
Yes.
And then they were like at the bottom, so anybody that came on that road had the high ground, and they could just pick them off if they didn't just put the terrorists on the train and let them jump out as it rode through the camp. And they didn't understand why that shouldn't be a camp. And I was just like,
yeah,
I need to go home. I'm done. I
need to go. So we did get farmed out and go on little mini vacations and do vulnerability assessments. Like early on, we went to that secret site that was on the top of a mountain. And, we had to write everything up. And every time we asked questions, like, you're not allowed to know that. Like, yeah, but we're cleared for it. Do you remember that?
Right.
And one of the guys has like a Laws rocket under his arm.
Yes.
What patch is that on your arm? And he's like, I don't know. Like, okay, we just need to make a picture of this and then leave, And then we went to Serbia. Not Serbia. We went to Sarajevo. Do you remember that? Do you remember we went to Sarajevo? We drove around.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we drove on the edge of a mountain. And like the road was so narrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we got to Sarajevo and we looked around and there were bullet holes everywhere. And I don't even know why we went there, but we ended up there somehow, some way,
Yeah.
Just gave us a weird job. I wanted to, you did a remarkable thing at one point, because, okay, wait, let me back up. Were we a good team, or what were your thoughts on, like, you don't know what you're doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Bart Dachko's an asshole. Greg McGowan's as goofy as I am. What were your thoughts when you saw all of this mess? All the hash. That's just, we were literally thrown together. What were you thinking?
I was thinking, man, I am in over my head, but I'm gonna fake it until I make it. So, I was glad that they did. What was the name of that Navy interpreter that they gave us?
Well, we called him Vegas.
Really skinny. Yeah, but and do you remember how all of the officers would salute him because he had that emblem on his, and nobody knew the Navy rank. He was just an E5, but all the all the officers saluting him when we walked through camp.
Yeah, so there's an eagle on top of his E5.
Sergeant Kilgore was great.
Yeah, Sergeant Kilgore was great.
So him, Sergeant Kilgore. Elizabeth McMarlin. I think once we got that team, it gelled much better, and it worked a lot better as a team. And then I was kind of feeling like, okay, we might have something here that we could capitalize on and actually collect some intel and have a good time. And to me, that was our family core. Once we got Sergeant Kilgore and Elizabeth, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
You may not realize this, but when Sergeant Kilgore became my NCO, that was my 7th NCO in my 2-year stay in Germany.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was gun shy about any of those guys. They would, they all treated me differently and poorly. And I was just like, and Sergeant Kilgore just kept being nice. And I'm like, what? Something bad's going to happen here. He was the first good NCO where, like, I thought the guy actually cared about me, because I had some very green NCOs before that. I wanted to ask you about this too, because we didn't really know what to do. I mean, it seems like Bart did. I want to give him credit because he kind of said, hey, we need to be out every day going and doing things. Yeah. But we also were taking some serious risks. I mean, which is our job. But, that's not a job you signed up for. You signed up to be an interrogator on a controlled site and talk to people. And now we're yanking you out and doing our crazy ass shit. Was that scary for you? Was that scary for you?
I don't remember it being scary, but I do remember it more thinking that I was worried if something would happen to one of you guys, because we were out there a lot of times by ourselves. and sometimes we would take one other unit with us, but those guys, they weren't serious. They were
Yeah.
just kind of they were just coming along
Yeah.
to get away from the camp because most of them were prisoners, of IFOR kind of thing. But we were actually pretty blessed because if somebody would have started shooting at us or doing something, we would have been hosed. There's just no way we could have ever protected ourselves.
So there was a time where we went and talked to a military unit, and I don't remember who they were, but we didn't know who they were. We just knew they were military. We wanted to go check in on them. And so we drove to their camp, and you, McGowan, Vegas, and Dotchko all went in, and then I minded the vehicles. And Bart's like, you count every guy here. Tell me everything you know that you're going to come back. And so I'm like memorizing every single detail I can memorize, and everything happens. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Literally, what am I supposed to do if something happens here? I'm in a valley. There's got to be 100 people walking around doing army shit. And you guys are talking and for hours. And like, I always thought back, like, he should have just said, come with us. It don't matter. Like, if they steal our shit, they steal our shit, like,
right.
I wasn't going to stop anybody. Halt, don't steal our shit, but it was
right.
It's crazy. When you think back, it's crazy. The other thing I wanted to say was when we were doing the vulnerability assessments, one of the days I did a flyover of the camp in a Black Hawk. And then I was going to go to another camp and just, take pictures and stuff. I don't know if you recall this mission. It was a tasking from somewhere. And the helicopter broke during the mission. And when I say broke, like it wasn't happy. It wasn't like going to crash, but we literally landed in an open field somewhere. And then the warrant officer and the captain are talking, and I'm the mission. They're there for me. And so, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an E4. I'm just like, I'm here to take pictures. I don't know. Let's just keep taking pictures. Then they come back to me and they're like, look, we've been talking about it. We're not happy with where the helicopter's at. And so we're going to cancel the mission and drop you off. And we're going to get back. And I'm like, are we safe? And they're like, yeah, everything's going to be fine. But let's just make sure and err on the side of caution. So I'm like, okay. And keep in mind, before that, they got me strapped in. I'm leaning outside of the helicopter. I'm taking great pictures, having a blast. And so dropped me off outside of Rumbaugh at the helipad, which was a mile plus away. And nobody's there. Nobody radioed anybody. I didn't have a radio. And they left.
Oh my God.
So now I'm like, well, what do I do? Do I stand here? So I stood there for a while, like an E4, because I didn't know what to do. I just waited. And I'm like, well, I guess no one's going to come. So I'll walk home. But by then there were like 50 kids around me. And I don't know where the landmines are. And so I'm walking every step. Like, if anybody does anything, I'm going to have to kill these kids, And then every step closer to the camp was a step closer to somebody being terrified of some infiltrator army guy, because why would an army guy be walking up solo? And I was like, I'm going to get shot. I'm going to get every step. I'm going to get shot. I'm going to get shot. I'm going to get shot in the back. I'm going to get shot in the front. And the whole way I was like, what the fuck? What a shitty thing to do to someone. Can you imagine?
Well, and then of course we didn't know. I mean, I didn't know any of that stuff. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. But I do remember that you guys were good at rounding up stuff, and I do remember that time that it was. Remember we had ordered doors for the Humvee.
Yes.
Do you remember this story where you guys? So we had ordered new doors for our Humvee, and you guys had we put them on. We go to the motor pool and we're in there with 50 other vehicles from the 30th Medical Brigade, and I go the next day to get in my Humvee, and it's got these crappy old doors on them.
Yeah,
and I'm like, where are my new doors I just got yesterday? So I remember being so mad. I just told you and McGowan, and I think Sergeant Kilgore was with us at the time, and I said, I don't want to know anything, but when I get up tomorrow, I better have those new doors on my vehicle.
We did.
Yeah. So then, but you guys were smart. You guys sprayed our unit designation on the inside of it. You remember that? We had our unit stuff in there. Then I guess the lieutenant who had stole my doors comes up to me at dinner time and says to me, Chief, I think you've got my doors on your vehicle. And I go, LT, if you're going to say to me that I stole back the doors that you stole from me, I'm going to punch you in the face. And he just looked at me and turned around and laughed. That's like, that's pretty ballsy to come up to
Yeah.
me and said, you stole back what I stole from you. And I'm just like, I'm not having it.
Yeah, you
Not
wouldn't have
having
it. You did that. There was another lieutenant that didn't like my eye protection, and because he claimed it was faddish. Do you remember this guy?
Yes, yeah.
And he would harass me, and I had all the branding taped off, and they worked for me. I liked them. They did the job. And then you at one point said this to him. You said they can't be faddish if no one else is wearing those ugly things. Basically told me you can't have a fad that no one follows. They're just goggles.
Yeah.
Shut up.
I don't know. I was there for so long. I was just past all the BS. I just wanted to do my job, do, what I needed to do and move on, and just to get past all the politics and, all the little things. And I didn't know if I ever told you guys this, but there had been a meeting one day during the week. Because remember, we used to sleeping a little later because we would be out, doing stuff. And then we would be out on Saturdays and Sundays talking to the locals when everybody else was, sleeping and having their days off. Yeah. And so one of the commanders, I was in front of all of the commanders there. They were complaining and saying that the MI people were sleeping in and we weren't doing our job. And I just let them know, hey, while you guys are sleeping on Saturday, Sunday, we're out. We're out patrolling. We're out doing our thing. We're out collecting intel while you guys are sleeping. So if we want to take Monday and Tuesday off, I don't understand what the big deal is.
Yeah.
And then after that, they just kind of left us alone. And I think part of it was we weren't attached to them, so they didn't understand what we actually did.
Yeah.
So we were, they kind of saw us, that fun unit that goes out and does stuff, and everybody wanted to go with us so they could get off the base. And it might look like we're just BSing and talking, but we were actually collecting intel and then coming home and writing reports and sending them in. But they didn't understand that.
Yeah.
So
because we worked behind the head, like in that hallway that was behind like the main office, and so if we were writing, they couldn't see all that stuff. And I remember when you stood up, and because somebody complained, because Greg and I were out laying in the sun during our downtime because we had been out drinking and writing and working until like 2 a.m. And so you had said, hey, everybody just relax for a while, get some rest, because we needed it. And I remember being tired, like, now, thank God we could have a break today. And so like the guys drove by on the patrol, they were going to go out, but they didn't know we had been out all night. And you stood up, and not only did you say, hey, my guys are working hard. We go out all the time. You don't know how late we're working. And if you guys are jealous of us, go get higher GT scores. And you said that right in front of him. And then the commander, being the boss that he is, goes, anybody got a problem with Miss Team? And then it was over. But he took your cue and backed it up. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Tell those guys to get higher GT scores. Holy shit. Okay. That was, the thing that I really wanted, I've always given you credit for, even though you weren't there to hear it. I've always said that you were such a great boss in that, because you did stand up for us. Like, we were going to help the whole camp family out. We will help you patrol every now and then. We will help you do these things, but we have a job that we can do every single day that will keep all of us alive, and we're going to do that. And there are plenty of warrants that didn't do that.
Right.
There were plenty of warrants that had their counterintelligence assets burning poop and moving things around, and you made sure that we were out. And even though it was dangerous, probably all the people that were there, we probably took the most risk out of everybody. Being out all the time, and you ensured that we got to do that, and we learned how to do the job well. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question. When we were out doing all those things, do you remember that camp? It was like in a valley, and it had a high tower on the camp, and it was more built up. It wasn't a bunch of tents. It was like some kind of a factory or something. Do you remember this at all? It was surrounded on 3 sides by.
I don't.
we had to go there every now and then, and we did screenings there for like 3 straight weeks, and we would just screen Bosnians. Either way, we did hundreds of interviews at this place. It's also the place we went to. Go ahead.
Was it on the back of Bedrock? Was it on the back of Bedrock? Remember,
this was like a forested area. It was in our area, but it was forested, and it was just far enough away that we could drive to it. But it was where that kid was when they thought he might have been sneaking out of camp and taking pictures of the camp.
Okay.
That camp. Anyhow, that place, I learned how to ask questions on that mission. Like I learned like I got to do all the mistakes and work it all out and, write all those reports. And I really learned the basics of our job there. And I don't know if you ever knew that, but it was a crappy thing to have to do. But having 600 interviews in 3 weeks was a way to sort out like how to ask questions right and how to write down notes in a way that you could constantly get information. Yeah. Did you learn anything along the way?
Well, I watched you guys, and I had to learn how to, first of all, to give you space and to give you room because we had 2 different jobs to do. I don't think I learned much interrogation wise what I needed to do, but I learned a lot of leadership stuff, which was invaluable. That's, you just kind of throw them out there and say, okay, I know you used to be enlisted and now you're a warrant officer and you got to deal with the other officers and you're in charge of these guys and okay, see you, bye. And so it was kind of some days falling on my nose and some days going, man, I am really screwing this up. But my thing was I didn't want anybody to get hurt on my watch. I wanted everybody to go home. And I think that a lot of times I tend to look at my subordinates or whoever it is as family, and so I wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of. So that's what I learned.
It felt like a family. You accomplished that.
Yeah.
And like you said, especially when Sergeant Kilgore got there, we really got plussed up. We had more assets because you think about it, there were 4 of us, well 5 of us with Vegas.
Right.
That's not a lot of people.
No, not at all. Not at all. And we had two vehicles, and I remember many a days driving through that dusty quarry, the dust flailing out behind us as we're passing Bedrock coming in, and then everybody's trying to remember what are you collecting? What are you collecting? And it wasn't easy, but I guess it could have been a lot worse. People had actually been shooting at us.
Can you imagine? Wow.
Miserable, So
yeah. You didn't get to do a lot of the collection, because that really wasn't your job in that case. When you sat there, during those meetings with very little to do externally, were you thinking? Were you daydreaming? Were you paying attention? What were you doing to pass those hours? Because you might be there for 4 hours and you're largely not talking at all.
I think I first I was just kind of soaking it in, trying to see, what was going on, and I understood the collection piece, of course.
Yeah.
But I think more was just trying to figure out what we were going to do just in case somebody would come through that door, gun or some crazy thing trying to kidnap us, And there really wasn't much daydreaming. I was just kind of, I guess, being the second set of ears, just in case somebody came back and said, hey, do you remember what they said about this or what they said about that? Yeah. I think the only time that I was totally useless, because remember we used to pick people, because it got to the point where we would get back to tent and go, do you remember? No, I don't remember what they said about this, because we had both, we'd all been drinking.
Yeah.
So then we started designating somebody to be like the primary drinker, so that we wouldn't offend people, so that we could get back and write our reports. And I remember one time, man, they started out early on that Slevo, and it's when we had moved to Angela, and remember we were allowed to camp park our vehicles right outside of the tent because we told the commander, hey, we're drinking and we don't want the soldiers seeing us drinking.
Yeah.
And I remember you and Sergeant Kilgore had to drag me into the tent when we got back at night because I had drinking so much of that Slevo, and I was like, I don't want to go out ever again. I was just a hurt unit. But I think at first it was a little boring because it'd be like, okay, we're here talking, but then when you learn how to, it's a craft to learn how to direct the conversation towards the intel that you want to collect without them really knowing what you're asking.
Right.
And
Right.
you guys were really good at that. So Tim came along with us a couple times and was like, man, you guys just sit here and BS and one of you
Yes.
drinks. And it's like, well, then we've done our job because that's what you are supposed to think that we're doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not what we're really doing. So you guys did really good at that, at collecting intel and making it look easy, I guess.
That's great to hear. And it's something that I have talked about. Like, if you were to go with me on a deployment, you would think I'm just yucking it up and having a blast everywhere. But the entire time, my brain is clocking on the conversation. I'm remembering things. I'm getting detail. And I only got better, at it because I spent a lot of time in the field after we were together.
Right.
I've done a lot. So, yeah, I love that you have that there. And hopefully you put that in my brain. And because that's exactly what we were always trying to do. But we did drink a lot. I mean, all the time with the drinking. Did you worry about that at all? Because we were allowed to do it, but
right.
it would be easy to get into trouble too.
Well, and I think we were okay with it, and it was just us that knew it, the members of our team. And then I think one of my mistake one day was telling Tim, who I eventually married, for those of you who don't know, he came along with us, and we let him have some drinks, and he's a loud drunk. He's like a really, I'm like, shut up, man, quit talking. And he's slurring his words and stumbling into, and I'm like, you cannot come along anymore. This is supposed, So then, the word kind of got out and nobody really knew because remember, we used to make them sign those statements saying that we will not tell anything that was going on. But, when you're loud drunk, you don't care. I said, okay, I'm cutting you off. You cannot come with us anymore. So, I mean, that was so I'm just thinking, and he slept in the officer hooch. So he was in there with another company commander, two other lieutenants. And so there were like there were like five of them in one hooch. And I was just so worried that, he would tell one of them, oh, we went drinking with the MI team. And then I was like, no, dude, I'm cutting you off. You're not allowed to go anymore. So,
yeah. And this is just for the folks who are listening. So we're authorized by regulation to drink. And actually, get this, the Army will buy us booze to get people drunk. So we would, on occasion, have to go back to headquarters and grab a box of booze. And one of the times I was in the commander's Humvee, this is the colonel who runs the whole brigade. And I brought the box back, but I had to go back to the company. But I don't want to carry this box of bottles around everywhere. And so I drop off the box and I look at Sergeant Beebe was his name, Sergeant Beebe, because he was the commander's driver. And I said,
yes.
What's in this box is classified, which is true. And I'm like, you cannot fuck with this. And he's like, no problem. We're going to take, and we got to stop up here. We'll be back for you guys in an hour. And no worries, your box is safe in the back. Well, it fell over. Because, those roads were so crazy. And there was booze everywhere. And he's like, listen, I didn't want to look. It fell over because we hit a bump. And so I put all the bottles back in. I won't tell anybody, I promise. He was so afraid of getting caught for a security violation, and he didn't tell the boss or nothing. He just he was like, oh my God, what's really going on with you guys? And I'm like, we're doing classified stuff, man. You can't know about it. And he was like, it totally worked on him. Even though it was legit, it really he bought the whole story. It was great. That ability to collect information.
So we saw Sergeant Beebe a couple years ago.
Did you really? Where at?
No, we saw Sergeant Beebe a couple years ago. Yeah, he came here to San Antonio. He was here in San Antonio. We met him. He came through for something. So and he looks the same. Looks the exact same.
That's funny. So, who recognized who?
I think Tim invited him down.
Oh,
They keep in touch over Facebook, and he said he was coming. He knew we lived here, and he was coming through town, and he he looks the same. Man has not changed. Never
that's
changed.
funny. What should we have had to be prepared, especially with two really green E4s who hadn't deployed ever? What should we have had in training in terms of, just to try to be prepared? What would you have liked to see?
I think because going into a place where you don't know, we should have had some better communication. We should have had some radios. I mean, if nothing else, walkie talkies to,
Right.
take out on our mission what this in case you get separated. I think a little bit more, not necessarily infantry type tactics, but just how to call in for help. How I'm surrounded. What are just other than just like, okay, to me, it was like taking a bunch of people out of basic training. They went to AIT, maybe had done some stuff and said, okay, you're a part of this group and she's in charge. There were, there were a lot of things that I'm thinking like, as we're driving through Hungary thinking, man, if we get ambushed, my team is going to die because I don't know anything. They didn't teach,
Yeah.
I've been in MI
Yeah.
all my life. I know how to fire a weapon, but good God, just I think maybe just some more infantry type tactics. And if we didn't need them and you never have to use them, that's awesome. That's a
Yeah.
great thing, But and then I think maybe we should have done like some mock, not interrogations necessarily, but had like maybe 10 or 15 people, and then some that didn't have factual things and some who had factual things, and then try to get you to see, who is, doing what, and
Yeah.
trying, just I think more for our job, for our safety, and then to maybe give us a little bit of background on the place where we're going instead of us having to try and figure it out for ourselves.
They didn't know where we were going.
Oh, it's just
Yeah.
okay, true. Okay, and then you're right.
Yeah.
So.
But still, yeah, we did get some training, but it was really big macro stuff. We had to go figure it out. One of the things that it came to me, later in our deployment was you don't have to look for threat all the time. Knowing that Camp Angela turns
Right.
into a lake in the spring, knowing that you can't put a tent on a road, all of these things are extremely valuable to the commander, and no one else is talking about it. And so it seemed like we collected a lot. Once we kind of knew where the bad players were and that there wasn't a lot of active threat, we really focused on, what else do we need to know to win, or to not make a dumb mistake.
Right.
And that was extremely valuable, just to go out and talk to these farmers and have them go, yeah, we're doing okay financially. Like we're making a comeback. Like that stuff is vital, And if you look for threat all the time,
totally,
that's all you can see,
Right. I think the one thing that we did do, and I wish we had done more of, was I don't know if you remember this, when the mayor said they needed toothbrushes, and we were able to go up to the MASH and get a bunch of toothbrushes and hand out. I wish we had been able to do more humanitarian kind of stuff like that. Maybe get a doctor to come to the village and, go with us on our Sunday thing and maybe look at people or, treat minor things. Those people really had nothing.
Yeah.
They had absolutely nothing.
I don't know if you recall this, but we met someone else like that, and they were all like rebuilding their part of the town. And so they were just nonstop doing construction. And this was one of the things I learned, and I carried it through my career, was how do you find the smallest problem that you can solve easily, And I basically asked that question, and he's like, it's a dumb thing, but we don't have any sunscreen around here. If we just had some sunscreen, our lives would be significantly better because we'd stop just getting burned to death in the sun. Yeah. And, the next time we came back, I gave him a big box, and that guy introduced us to somebody else who knew the kind of people that we wanted. And so it was just that one simple, small thing. And the next thing you know, we're talking to people that nobody else in that valley could talk to because of that sunscreen.
Right.
Do you recall that at all or no?
So,
it's been a long time.
I don't remember that. I remember. Yeah. I'm I'm lucky if I remember what I did yesterday. So.
Did you talking about like, looking for other things at all? We were all over the place. I mean, we might be in the mine proper, we might be on a farm, might be in a little built up village. We were all over the place. I never thought about the threat day to day, minute to minute. Like I really focused on the job part of it. Thank you for thinking about keeping us alive, because you have the tension, but it wasn't my main focus, and it couldn't be my main focus. My job was to ask the questions and everything. When did you get a sense for it wasn't that dangerous there where we were?
I don't know. I think it was like maybe towards the end of the deployment. And I think maybe part of it when we were just going in and talking to people. I mean, I know we were going to villages where like every other house was bombed, or they had been through a war, but that's not what they wanted us for. We were not their enemy, and they were just there trying to survive. And I think probably towards the end of that deployment, I realized that, okay, it's to be in it. It's good to be vigilant, but we've missed some opportunities through being scared that something was going to happen.
Yeah, you have to be aware. And I had that shift too. It was probably like after the summer when we all gotten back from leave and had time to kind of get away and come back. We had made friends with these people, and I think we were a trusted part of that community, because we didn't ask for much and we tried to always bring things,
Right.
I do remember one really cold spring day, maybe like the last really cold, like an 11-degree day. We got to wherever we were at on the edge of the mine, and it was like just a shitty old house. And we'd never met these people before, and it was just so goddamn cold, just like bright, crisp, clear, cold day. And the farmer guy hands McGowan and I beers, and we both take them, and we look at the can, and we're like, 11% alcohol. Yes. We just, because it was so cold, like the only way to maybe get one was to drink, and we didn't say anything, but we had the exact same idea.
I'm down in the spirit. Do you remember when we slaughtered the pig? Was it for
Easter?
Yeah. That was good eating.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because I've told a lot of people about this, but it doesn't make sense to them. So at some point, I had come up with the idea of doing a pig roast for Easter, and I started making those flyers. Remember those flyers? And it would say the pig is coming, and I would put them around the camp, and no one knew what it meant. And ultimately, it was an intel operation, but we were able to sneak this pig roast thing into it. And I don't know if you recall, but the brigade commander said, all you officers are going to dig into your pockets and pay for this thing. And so we bought those 3 or 4 pigs or whatever. But then we also went to the farm with the veterinarians from the medical unit. And while we were kind of working, that was the best meal I've ever had in combat, because we had beer, fresh bread, liver. It was so, do you remember it being good?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that. But I do remember the best pizza I had was your mom sent some artichokes in a can. I think she did all the fixing for pizza. Remember that?
Yes.
And we took it to the kitchen, and we had pizza. I remember that.
Oh my God! Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, she sent us all the pieces for the pizza, and the cooks were great, because we were eating. Well, we weren't eating great. We were eating MREs every day, and then it was easier and warmer to stay in your room and eat than it was to go out to the ration tent. Which was, God, it was cold there. Would you do it again? And if we did it, would you want me to be on your team?
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember what.
No. What were you going to say? What did you remember?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I remember being. It was cold. Remember, we were like the first MI guys there, and there weren't a whole bunch of other people there. And remember, they had like this. It was like a kitchen, but it was on wheels, and you had to walk up into it. and then you walk through and you walk down.
Yeah.
And I remember when I realized that this really sucks when it was cold, as the food was freezing as they were putting it on our plate. And then when we got to the end, they opened up this looked like a giant can of sardines, but it was a cake. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's funny.
I'm going home. I'm taking my toys and going home.
Going home. And then also, just because we were with the medical unit, anybody who got hurt in our unit, we ended up being like the hospital check-in team too. You remember, like Sergeant Duggan got sick, and then when our MWR Kirk guy got struck by lightning.
Tim and I were talking about that the other day, and how we had to sign for him. Remember, we had to sign for him because he was there by himself, and they were giving him morphine, and they wanted somebody to be responsible for him. I remember that.
we owned the MWR guy. We made friends everywhere. We really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was asking you earlier, like, would you want to do it again with those circumstances? And obviously you can have it better. You can certainly have it worse. But what's your overall impression of that whole experience?
Well, first of all, it was a great place because that's where I met the love of my life. So I can't really complain about that. But overall, I think being at the 30th Medical Brigade and where we were, first of all, made it just a better experience because we weren't there with the rest of our unit, at the talk with the commander and the first sergeant. And I think we had a good team. I think that by the time Sergeant Kilgore had rolled through and we got Elizabeth and then Elvis and everybody came through, that was a solid piece there, and we all got along really well. And so I think that enabled us to kind of weather the stupid stuff that came along.
Yeah.
And to me, that's important that, if you have a kind of like a unit that gets along together, you guys can fight whatever comes along. But, there were a lot of teams out there that were very dysfunctional and they didn't get anything done and then they hated it, so at least I could look forward to having the team there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would do it over again.
Well, I can tell you this from all of the bosses that I had in the Army. I mean, not that the bar was super high, but I think you did a hell of a job. You stood up for us. You took what was a weird unit for any unit to receive and easy to marginalize, and you said, hell no, we do important shit. And then we went out and did important shit for them and gave them something that nobody else in the brigade could do. And you enabled that to happen. And, you tolerated our nonsense, our yelling, our screaming, our drinking, our buffoonery. But we figured it out. I think we put something good together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for me at all?
When are we going to do this again? We'll have to figure out something else to talk about.
I'm going to be in Texas twice in the next couple of weeks. So maybe I'll pop in for a visit too. But yeah, it's super fun.
Do that.
I will try. I will try to do it. If nothing else, just for like a meal or something, if we're able to get together like that. But yeah. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, just because no one knows this, but our team was so in love, like a family, that we all found love while deployed. I met my fiance and got married, and we're not married anymore, but we still get along fantastically. For an ex-couple, we're just family. And then Sergeant McMarlin found the love of her life, and I don't know if she's still married, but they fell in love. We're going to get married. You and Tim got married. That's a pretty good result from being deployed.
Yeah, it is. Bosnia was great for me.
Yeah, it was. I think so for me too. It established the kind of guy I was. And then I got to go back to Huachuca, but not because of Army design. Like I ended up there because I got married to Jennifer, and then she was signal, and her orders curtailed her to go to Huachuca. And so, I just went along, and then I got there during Christmas Exodus, and so there was an IFOR doing like the personnel assignments. And he's like, well, you should go to the 309th. You don't want to go to the 305th. It's terrible. You've already been deployed. And so I got over to the 309th because of just happenstance and luck at an E4 making a call for me. How great is that? What is Tim saying here? Definitely come for the barbecue patio. You know it. I will. In San Antonio. Yeah. Well, listen, this is good. We had a great time. It looks like John got married. Oh, John went to Huachuca too. Okay. Yeah. Actually, John Murray and I ended up working in the same building on opposite ends of it. He taught counterterrorism. I taught source operations. And Sergeant Rickards was also 165th, and she was my boss there too. She also was fantastic. So super fun chat. Do you want to say anything else before we wrap it up?
No, that's it.
So easy.
It was great talking with you. And do come to San Antonio and see us.
I'm going to do my absolute best. I think I can do it. So I'll definitely be working on it. All right. Stand by for a sec. I'm going to sign off.
Okay.